Okay, so let's get started. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this second episode of our series of open source AI workshops organized by the Eclipse Foundation. I am Gaël Blondelle. I am the VP Ecosystem Development of the Eclipse Foundation and the Managing Director of Eclipse Foundation in Europe. I have been working in open source since 2004. So in my professional life, that's mostly forever, and in different positions, like doing business development, creating a company, or participating to different open source foundations. So since 2013, I joined the Eclipse Foundation with this focus on working groups as the program manager of Colarsis, and now as a VP of ecosystem development in Europe. And so since recently, I started to get more and more interest in artificial intelligence, and we decided to organize those webinars about AI and open source, and to investigate what open source can bring to AI. So the topic of the day is how does open source can help to create a trustworthy artificial intelligence. And so we will have a panel with 5 speakers who are much more experts on these domains than I can be. So we have Jasmine Grossinger from Örebro University, and she also works for AI4EU. Nicolas Ascher from Anity and IRIT. Jean-Claude Belfior from Huawei. Christian Müller from DFKI, and François Terrier from CEA. And after that, we keep our format of having a panel on what is important to AI, and then after this kind of more theoretical discussions, having a technical presentation. So in the last part of the webinar this morning, we'll have an introduction to Pixano, which is an open source tool to assist annotation of image database. And that will be done by Camille Dupont from CEA. So some housekeeping. So this webinar is recorded, and it will be published on YouTube. So yeah, you will be able to watch it later. Attendees don't appear in the recording, but your name may be visible or may be mentioned if you ask a question. We will have time for Q&A at the end of the panel and at the end of the technical presentation. So please send your questions in the Q&A part of Zoom webinar, and I read them to the speakers when we are in this time. Thanks to our sponsors. So we also started this series of open source AI webinar because of this sponsorship from Huawei. And so thank you to Huawei for helping us in organizing those webinars. Before going further, I have 2 important announcements. The first announcement is that we have EclipseCon 2020, and this year, as you can guess, that's an online conference, of course. So that's coming soon, and that's an online conference. That's a free conference, and actually, for some technical reasons, we will have to limit the number of registrations. I think that we have more than 1,600 registrations now, and we are getting close to this limit. So if you are interested in joining EclipseCon, and you should be interested, then register now before it's too late. You can get all the information on eclipsecon.org, and you have a list of the program, etc. And one good reason for which you should register is that we will have our next opportunity to discuss AI in the Eclipse ecosystem will be during the Community Day on October 19th. We have an AI roundtable, and typically that's a kind of format where we do some kind of unconference style. So we have the space. Now, in this case, we have a virtual meeting, and you can join us with your own ideas. But really, the topic will be, okay, how can we work together to boost the AI community in the Eclipse ecosystem? So if you have an idea of a project, or if you know a project that should join the Eclipse ecosystem, if you want to tell us what we have to do to get closer to your AI partners, then just join us for this roundtable. As I said, that's free, and but you have to register for EclipseCon before it's too late. So that's it with housekeeping, and I will start with few words of introduction, with also just a reminder about why do we try to do more in AI at the Eclipse Foundation, and also a few words about what is the Eclipse Foundation. And then we will start with our panelists to get several different point of views about on the topic of the day. So just first, that's something that's maybe obvious for you, but I still feel that I need to say it every time I can. That yes, we are the home of the Eclipse IDE. The Eclipse Foundation and the Eclipse Adventure started 16 years ago, or even more, thanks to the fact that IBM had in 2001 open sourced the Eclipse IDE. But since 2010, so for 10 years now, we claim that every project can be an Eclipse project, and we have so many Eclipse projects that are not related to the Eclipse IDE. We have Eclipse projects in IoT, in cloud-native Java with Jakarta IE, in edge computing, in cloud-based development tools, in automotive. That's really, we are really one of the well-recognized open source umbrella organization in the world. Yeah, you cannot name so many. There are really a few of them, like the Linux Foundation, the Apache Software Foundation, the Eclipse Foundation, and we are one of them. We started with the Eclipse IDE, but today we are really hosting every project that wants to work according to real open source values of transparency, openness, and meritocracy. I'll come back to that, and that wants also to adopt a business-friendly open source license. In May, last May, we announced that the Eclipse Foundation becomes a European-based organization. So we are creating Eclipse Foundation AISBM, so that's Association Internationale Sans But Lucratif, which will be our international not-profit association based in Brussels. So we filled all the papers, and now we are waiting. We are in this moment in the process when we are waiting for feedback from the Belgian administration. But we are really so close to get this Eclipse Foundation AISBM, which will be the new headquarters, the new legal headquarters of the Eclipse ecosystem. And the Eclipse Foundation is already the largest open source organization in Europe in terms of the number of European developers contributing to Eclipse projects, in terms of the number of companies contributing to, who are European companies and organizations who are members of the Eclipse Foundation, and also in terms of the number of projects that are really built by Europeans in Eclipse. And when we moved to Europe, we on purpose, we start to address some of the hot topics in Europe, and artificial intelligence is definitely one of them. You potentially read this white paper from the European Commission about artificial intelligence. It mentions that Europe should provide a level playing field, etc. And that's really consistent with our values. So I'll come back to that. So that's why we are holding this webinar today, and why we also want to create this AI ecosystem inside the Eclipse Foundation. And to come back to our topic of the day, I think that one of the key features we bring to the table is that the Eclipse Foundation enables sustainable, vendor-neutral, open collaboration. So GitHub, I know that in artificial intelligence, lots of people do open source. But I also know that lots of projects are hosted on GitHub, for example. And to be honest, that's certainly one of the best collaboration platforms nowadays. You have all those features of social coding, of everybody can try your code, etc. But what's missing in GitHub is the vendor neutral collaboration in a level playing field. So that's really what we bring to the table. We have those processes, and we have those best practices that help companies and universities and academics work together on a fair level playing field. Also, we have a strong development process that ensures transparency in the development, and I come back to that. I think that transparency is also one of the key features, and very rigorous IP management that allows collaboration and exploitation of the resulting open source platform. So this is just to summarize our approach to business-friendly ecosystem based on extensible platform, and basically we provide those key features of infrastructure, governance and processes, community development, IP management, and we provide that to enable organizations to collaborate together on platforms, and that includes, by design, that includes a collaboration between competing organizations that can collaborate on open source platforms, and then create their own added value on top of it. That can be commercial products, that can be professional services, that can be training. Our legal framework is designed to not restrict the usage of open source of our open source components in any business case. Now, so as I said, I'm not an expert in artificial intelligence, but I'm an expert in open source ecosystem development. So here are 2 or 3 ideas about how open source can help to create trust in artificial intelligence. And I think that one of the key features is traceability. And just to give you a concrete example of traceability, I think that we need to know what where does the code comes from when you run an artificial intelligence framework. And we have lots of process in place for at the Eclipse Foundation to track the provenance of intellectual property, to have this rigorous IP management. We also have processes to handle security vulnerabilities, for example, and last but not least, we have an infrastructure to sign binaries. And I have a slide. The next slide is about how do we sign binaries. But I think that's, in my opinion, that's really a key. That when you use some code that has been signed with this infrastructure, you can check that the code you use is exactly the code that was part of the release, and with the traceability to your Git commits, you can even know who contributed to this code. And I think that, in my opinion, that's something that can be very important. We are very good at doing that for open source code for the moment, and I think that's something we can use for open data sets, because I know that in artificial intelligence, algorithms are one thing, but the data are very important. So, basically, we have those servers that use some cryptography to sign the binaries and to make sure that the signature of the binaries contains is created with the hash code of the content. So then for example, when Eclipse installs a plugin, they always check that the plugin has been, who signed the plugin, and how does this plugin, that this plugin has not been altered between the signature and the installation. So I think this feature is important when you use development tools like in Eclipse, but that's certainly even more important when you work with artificial intelligence. Another feature is, oh, there is a typo. Another feature is predictability, and that's something that I would just like to mention here, that over the years, the Eclipse ecosystem has developed a very strong process to create simultaneous releases that started in 2006. And between 2006 and 2018, we created 12 annual releases. And since September 2018, we created 8 quarterly releases. And that's not only a technical aspect. Of course, there are technical aspects about, okay, you should make sure that when you change an API, then you tell the rest of the world that, okay, you changed an API. But being predictable and coordinating a schedule with dozens or hundreds of developers is by itself a skill, and requires some specific processes. And I would claim that predictability creates trust. So I think that's something that is needed at some point in AI, because I have the impression that you need to put together lots of different topics, lots of different software in an AI tool chain, and this kind of processes can be very useful. And finally, I believe that good open source requires 3 important values, and that's, I guess that you have never seen a presentation from me without this slide. So our core values are transparency, openness, and meritocracy. And by transparency, we mean that we not only share source and documentation, but we also share project plans, meeting agendas, meeting minutes, decisions. Also, we share all the mistakes that we do in the project. By openness, we mean that everybody can participate in a project. And by meritocracy, we mean that everybody has to demonstrate their skills and will to participate to a project before getting the full access rights to the project. So you start as a contributor, and then at some point, when you manage to create trust with the rest of the project team, then you can be elected by the existing developers as a committer of the project with full access to everything. So to conclude, we are here to help. I really think that this open source, today we observe that in AI there is a lot of open source, but I really think that open source supported by an open source foundation can be can help create this trust. And that's maybe we need to set up new processes, new specific processes that we will define together to set up the trust. But we are here to help, and we are really eager to do that with you. Thank you. And so that's it for my introduction. I think I'm just on time with what is published on the website. So that's cool.